A few seconds beat.
You're tuned into the hottest paranormal life show on YouTube, Into the Fringe, where we discuss lost civilizations, UFOs, cryptids, unsolved mysteries, megalithic structures, extraterrestrials, interdimensional portals, time skips, and more. Don't change that channel, because now you are leaving the mainstream and entering into the fringe.
Greetings, followers. It is I, Cardinal Sin, and I would like to welcome you to Into the Fringe number 28 with our guest, Albert Rosales. And born in Cuba, Albert S. Rosales migrated to the U.S. in 1966. He had several unusual incidents as a young man while living in Cuba, and such incidents continued as an adult in the U.S. Rosales became interested in unusual phenomena and UFOs at a young age, but soon directed his focus to the crux of the phenomena, the humanoids, entities, extraterrestrials, UFO knots, etc. He began collecting data on such encounters from worldwide sources in the late 80s. He has a current database of over 20,000 entries, which is updated and corrected daily, and he has published 16 books to date. Welcome, Albert Rosales, to Into the Fringe.
Hi, Gil. Thanks for having me again.
You bet.
It's my honor to be.
The honor is all mine, my friend.
So what are we going to talk about?
Well,
today?
I guess we're going to talk about your first book, the 1 AD to 1899, right?
Well, this book covers mostly ancient encounter. It shows that the aliens, or whoever they are, they've been around forever, sometimes influencing the flow of history. And I picked up some cases that I found interesting. I sent you a few so we could discuss them, or at least mention them, about the cases.
Cool.
Okay.
So let's go ahead and dive right in. It sounds to me like the strange man that told the Emperor of Japan, "Recently I was informed that your country has stopped honoring the supreme God. If you will now repent of your former sins and build a temple to this God and make a sacrifice in honor of his divine spirit, your country will flourish. Don't forget about this." Was kind of making a threat.
It's like I say, they told the emperor, the most important person at that time in Japan, or Nippon, like they used to call it, that to do something like is similar to what the more modern incidents with the Virgin Mary encounters, with the Virgin tells the witness to build a shrine here. Something similar to that is. Are you talking about the case from 460 AD?
Could
or
be,
one
yeah.
before that. Okay, there's a one. This case from another case from Japan, 460 A.D. This is according to a Japanese manuscript, Nihoni, an emperor. I really hard to pronounce his name, but he was out bow hunting in a mountain nearby when he met a what he described was a tall man with wearing a strange cap and tight-fitting clothes. Clothing. I mean, similar to the modern day encounters. This man descended from the sky. Uh, the emperor thought he was in the presence of a god. Of course, back then, beings like that were interpreted as God, angels, demons, or what have you. And he actually, the tall man spoke to the emperor and told him he was the god of the visible people, and to be obedient to him, to the god of the visible people, whoever they were. And he gave him a couple more messages after that. He left in what it says in the manuscript, in a chariot. Now we could interpret a chariot as spacecraft, or just like the ancient vimanas in India, it could have been some type of spacecraft. And this kind of affected the history there in Japan, because it kind of switched focus in the religious beliefs there. I like to point out another incident. Interesting. This is more recent, but it was like from the year 1010. That's my the book. This is from Italy, a place called Ostium. According to the Peter Damian, the Cardinal Bishop of the Italian city of Ostium, he recorded something that today could be regarded as a typical abduction involving a 5-year-old son of a nobleman. According to the report, the manuscript, this boy, 5-year-old, was one night he was carried out of the monastery into a locked mill where he was found in the morning. And when he was questioned, how did he manage to get there since it was locked, he said he had been carried by strangers to a great feast and bidden to eat and asked to eat. And afterwards, he was put into the mill through the roof. So, okay, he was taken somewhere. We must assume that it was something, a flying object that took him, then put him in and through the roof in the mill that was locked from the outside. There's a lot of reports where people are abducted and back in Middle Ages, and like the fairies and the good people there, and they offer food to the humans they abduct.
Mm-hmm.
Many cases like that. Look at the list. See if you want to discuss any of the cases or mention one. I could bring one up. We're going back to Russia. Back then called the Empire of the Rus, RUS.
Mm-hmm.
Moscow region. We're talking about March, the month March, year 1111, 1111. Sorry. According to chronicles, in the days of March of that year, the Russian forces were aided twice by celestial powers. Okay, celestial, in the battle against the Polotzians. These were an eastern nomadic people. Okay, the head of the Polotzians fell flying to the ground, being beheaded invisibly. And the Polotzians, answering the question of why they lost, having great superiority in numbers, they said they said that how could we defeat the Russians when others walked through the sky with glowing and terrible weapons helping them. So this tribe was defeated by somebody helping the Russians, the early Russian Empire, and these people were from the sky and had fiery weapons that were able to destroy the whoever they were, the invaders. Now that's something that could change history right there, because that's when the Russian Empire began to grow, and now
Absolutely.
we have Russia now. It was it's interference by otherworldly forces or powers to guide the course of history.
It seems like throughout the book, there's several cases of that.
Yeah.
We have centaurs in Rome, werewolves in England, and sirens in Ireland. It sounds like this book gets into some really bizarre cryptozoology pretty quick.
All kind of I went into all kind of humanoids and incidents. Now I want to mention a couple from Turkey, which I digged up later. I don't think you got them.
But before you do,
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you,
Okay.
did you write this book before or after the other ones in the series?
That was the first one I wrote this was the last one I wrote.
Okay.
So I went backwards.
Okay.
From and that was the last one.
And how long does it take you to research and compile an entire book?
First, I collect the data, which takes me a while. A lot of it I need to translate. I communicate with researchers from Russia, other places, and most of the time I got to use the Google Translator, which is pretty good. It's not 100%, so you got to figure it out with what they're saying. It takes me a while. I had all the material ready before I published the books. And like you said, I've been gathering information since the late 80s, early 90s. And, it's been an up and down procedure. I collected I try to have it chronological, within a chronological formation. And that's how I got it. It's been a lot of hard work. I just don't sit around but it's like I have to type all of that. I have to print a lot of stuff and get it in order, translation, and
you have a second edition of all these books coming out soon, right?
I'm hoping. I've been in touch with a new publisher, and they're getting the Amazon contract redone again, so it shouldn't be long.
Very good.
Yeah, and I'm hoping to add another volume, which would include those cases that I sent you from 2016 to 2021. Maybe, yeah, because I'm stopping at 2020. Maybe I'll add a couple from 2021, but I think I've done enough.
Got to get those Tic Tacs in there, right?
Yeah, but like you said, I concentrate on the entities, humanoids, maybe some of the high strangeness cases, really weird, some disappearances.
I remember the story of the green children and the girl that became known as Agnes Barr. That one struck me as particularly bizarre. I remembered it from when I went through your online database.
The green children, they were found, and they claimed that came from a land that it was like it had like a 24 hour a day sun, and they were like in a great cave, and they said that they went through some kind of whirlwind and appeared in what it was, England back then in the Middle Ages, and both of them had a green tint to their skin. They were given food, which at first they refused to eat. The boy eventually died because he didn't eat that much, and he was sickly. The girl, like you said, she eventually grew up, and the tint on her skin faded away, and she began to look, more like a normal human being. But that is a very intriguing case. It feels like these whoever they were like from another dimension or something. That there was some kind of crack through the dimensions, and they were somehow brought in. And I think a lot of the disappearances nowadays involves people that somehow are sucked or somehow stumble into another dimensional plane. Most of the time, they're able to come back. Weird cases, and they find themselves in a completely different environment. Somehow they're able to get back.
Hmm.
Other times, these people are never seen again.
Right. Especially with the Fey folk and the fairies.
Yeah, some of them are there's cases back. They're gone, and they think they're only been gone for a day, and when if they come back, it's been like years. And that's very similar to some of your UFO cases. And also in some of the UFO incidents, the UFOs, they see you might see a UFO land or whatever. It's a small craft, and when you go inside the craft, it's like 100 times larger than what it looks from the
Just
outside.
like on Doctor Who, it's bigger on the inside.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's like I mean,
Makes you wonder where Doctor Who got that idea.
yeah, Doctor Who, the TARDIS.
Yep. Time and relative dimension in space.
Yeah, completely upside down. But I wanted to mention the case from Turkey. This I got from a Turkish researcher Murat Aksoy, and he talks about the wife of a great Turkish thinker. He was a very smart man. He was a prophet. His name was Mevlana. She saw her husband encountering six, what she could describe, an imposing looking men who came in from a door that strangely appeared on the wall of their house. All of a sudden, there was a door that wasn't there, but it appeared there. According to her, the men carried roses on their hands and presented them to her husband, Mevlana. Then they began to pray. When the prayer session ended, the six men vanished in plain sight. She took some of the roses and asked her gardener about the origin of these flowers. And amazed, the guy was amazed. He said these were from invaluable Indian roses, which were not known to grow in Turkey.
From India.
From India, yeah. So who knows? Who knows who? But he was definitely otherworldly characters. These people. And
You know, I noticed there are a lot of cases that were interpreted religiously in this book, but I suppose
Many.
that's to be expected because of how far back in the past it was.
yeah, because they didn't have any other point of reference. The only religion they were either gods, demons, angels, or the like. And this Turkish guy. This is back in the year in the 13th century, 1207 through that. He he had another encounter. He reported encounter in what he said there were alien beings. I don't know if what he meant by alien. It could have been maybe from another
And
country.
this is from 1300s?
Yeah,
Wow.
1200s. And one of his followers follow him. He was after him one day, follow him, and reported that he saw him communicating with some strange people inside what he described was a dome, a craft that was shaped like a dome. And we're talking about 1200s. Okay, and the craft, this dome had a large glass-like transparent section on top, in which the strangers and this guy, the Turkish thinker Mevlana, were easily seen. And the aliens or the people that were with him were wearing green clothing. And the witness took the incident to be some type of religious apparition and fainted on the spot. But yeah, he figured this guy was in contact with angels.
Yeah, and another thing that I remember from this book is that there's, angels, lots of dwarves, there was one case that took place in a monastery where like a gnome or a dwarf sort of came up out of the basement, and they captured him, and eventually they tied him up, and then they loosened the ropes to see where he'd go, and he just went back down into the basement and opened up a tunnel and went through there, and then they sealed it up.
Yeah, a lot of these cases with gnomes or trolls were said to be underground dwellers, that they will come out of their caves or their underground cities once in a while. And a lot of them lived in those what they call fairy mounds that the ancient Celts and the Irish would consider them to be holy sites, or not holy, but sites that they were owned by what they called the good people, or the fairies. Mm-hmm. And these fairies, they were reported a lot. They still report it today. Not as much as they were before, back in the Middle Ages, but some. We
have some viewers in Ireland, and one of them told me that there was a fairy mound just outside the town that he lives in. He lives in a pretty remote area, but yeah, there's still reports of brownies and elves and dwarves and all kinds of things.
Well, yeah, there's still reports. I mean, they're hard to locate, but there are still reports for that type of cases. Now, there's an interesting case I want to bring up. Again, this is from Russia, and involves their famous Tsar Ivan the Terrible.
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah.
Who allegedly had an alien implant?
There's information about that too. They found they exhumed his body, and they found some kind of implant that they couldn't determine what it was. But according to the Book of Thars, he was involved in several episodes that nowadays we will call Close Encounter of the Third Kind. And during Lent, the year 1430, okay. There was a clergyman from the Eastern Orthodox Church in Moscow in his bed. When wasn't Ivan, but it was at the time of the Ivan the Terrible rule.
Right.
This clergyman, suddenly the room was filled with bright light. Sound familiar? That happens, not with UFO cases nowadays, mm-hmm. Abductions. And this clergyman, his name was Photius. He saw a tall young man with golden hair. Nowadays, we will call that a Nordic type entity.
Right.
Like the man from the north, he said. Man from the north, Nordic. He was dressed in incredible clothing, which he said he couldn't describe or portray in human words. And there was something shining in his head, which the religious figure interpreted as a crown. Crown, again, religious interpretation there. And frightened, he asked who the stranger was, and the stranger replied that he was not of earthly people. He was not of this world. Mm-hmm. So he told the clergy that the remaining term of his life, a little more than a year, and advised him now that he should get his affairs in order and behave with the flock. So somehow this guy predicted that the clergy guy, he was going to die within the year, and he told him to get his affairs in order. After he said that, he became invisible. And, the servants found the clergy in a very bad state, but afterwards he regained his composure. He took the stranger to be an angel. He interpreted the stranger to be an angel.
You know what that reminds me of is the Count of Saint Germain.
Count of Saint Germain, yeah. The man that never dies.
The man that is in his 30s or 40s all throughout the ages.
They said that he's been seen or encountered in the area of California and Mount Shasta.
Really?
according to there was not a cult, but a group that was centered around Mount Shasta back in the 30s. And the leader of that cult, I don't remember a cult or group, I don't remember the name. He said he encountered Saint Germain there in one of the slopes of Shasta. And of course, he's been seen mostly in Europe, everywhere, and there's a lot of books written about him and a lot of sightings of this guy.
Yeah, a lot of the time he's been seen in the courts of kings and emperors and among the nobility, the lords and ladies, and
influencing. He's been influencing events throughout history.
Yeah, especially to Marie Antoinette, as I recall. He paid her a visit.
Right. And he possibly visited the others in France, especially during the time of the French Revolution.
Yeah, or just before, and he warned her about it.
He could have been. He could be a time traveler. Who knows? You never know.
Yeah, I suppose he could be.
Yeah. There's so many cases. It's hard to find. And this is another
one that I found very interesting. The case from Milan, Italy, when fascist Cardinal questioned the strange visitors as to the cause of the universe.
Fabio
Cardinal. They were not agreed.
Right.
Quote, the tallest of them denied that God had made the world from eternity. On the contrary, the other added that God created it from moment to moment. So should he desist for an instant, the world would perish. What a fascinating idea.
That was a very interesting case. It's in the book by Ballet, Passport to Magonia. And these men, they were described as tall, majestic looking, glowing. And after the conversation with Fabio Cardin, they just vanished. Now, why would they show up and speak to him in particular? Who knows?
Why indeed?
Yeah. I like to mention another case from Russia. This is from the year 1752, from the province of Kazan in Russia. This is a small boy named Jaska. He regularly visited the forest in order to collect berries there in the forest. And during one of the visits of the forest, he encountered a man that suddenly appeared in front of him out of nowhere. This guy just appeared in front of him. He said that the strange man was wearing a white clothing. He took the boy into a large way. The boy described it as a large copper cauldron or boiler, round dome-shaped cauldron, or bell-shaped, they said here. And he had him sit on a chair inside that object, okay? And he sat near the boy, and then they ascended to the sky, and they flew around to an unknown location. Soon, according to the boy, he was told that they were on another planet, where he lived for a year and a half, according to him. That was his own perception. In a house that remotely resembled a wooden house where he lived on Earth. At the same time, quite a bit of time passed on Earth. When he came back, like I mentioned earlier, a lot more time had passed. He felt that he was only been away for a year and a half, but on Earth, it's been like more than a dozen years. Dozen have passed.
Again, it mirrors fairy lore.
Yeah.
For every year that they spent in the fairyland, like 7 years or 20 years would have elapsed, and I remember one tale where someone went in to the fairy realm and stayed there, and when he came out, it was like 200 years later, and everybody that he knew was dead.
Well, just like the fairy tale of Rip Van Winkle, supposedly a
Hmm.
fairy tale. Maybe something like that did occur,
I
and
could believe it.
because this happened supposedly in upstate New York, and that area there, upstate New York, there's been a lot of sightings of little people resembling the fairies from Europe. They've been
Yeah.
seen in upstate New York and Canada, even in Arizona. They've been seen all over.
Let's go through some more of your favorite cases from this book.
All righty, you got one in there with you, or
Yeah. Um, let's see the.
okay? Okay, this one here is from China, year
Is this
1751.
about the Yellow Emperor?
No, that was way before. That was the first one.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
that one's interesting. This is the year 2637 BC.
Oh my goodness.
The Yellow Emperor, which they said that he was from the sky, so interpreted as maybe as a god, or and this guy, Yellow Emperor, supposedly he manufactured 12 gigantic mirrors of unknown nature and used them following the moon. I imagine to go to the moon,
Hmm.
and he says this mirrors or tripods depicted dragons flying in the clouds. Maybe the ancient Chinese, when they saw craft like that flying, all could they, they could only relate them to dragons.
They interpreted almost everything as dragons.
Dragon, yeah, yeah, which is very interesting. There's another case from 660 BC. What was then, well, and today also Mexico, Lambitieco in Oaxaca province. They tell a story of a man that arrived from the sky on a beam of light. This is interesting. Uh, he took a native woman as a wife. This person, this godlike figure, he came down and he married a human female, just like Genesis says. The giants came down and they married.
Found the
Yeah,
daughters of men to be beautiful, and
right. Yeah, according to the report, he taught the people many wondrous things. They had a son, and when the son was grown and married, the man stood in the center of the village again and left. He left again on a beam of light, never to be seen again. The stranger from the city was called Cosijo, the god of the ray. That's what they named him, the god of the ray, because beam of light that he came in and left. There's a temple along the side of the highway there in the city of Lambiteco, uh, of of the god wearing like what seems to be a mask, and they erected a plaque there of this supposed myth that occurred back we're talking about BC now, 660 BC. And this story I got it from a Mexican researcher and from our Native American researcher, Dr. Artie Six Killer Clark.
hmm
She has written some wonderful books about
she has.
encounters with Native Americans. And
I think that was the first time I heard about the cigarette smoking dogs in the trench coats that were standing on their hind legs. Are you familiar with that?
like Dogman or
Dogmen,
maybe
yeah.
yeah, or maybe Skinwalkers. That's interesting.
Yeah, they could have been skinwalkers, yeah. But they were smoking, they're like dogs standing
Well,
on their hind feet in trench coats smoking cigarettes. And that's like the most high strangeness you can get.
Okay, I spoke to this is weird too. I spoke to a researcher. He was mostly into paranormal subjects and all that. But he told me one time he was at home, in the shower, and this guy was old, but he was very smart. He was he knew a lot about paranormal and all that stuff. But he told me that one time he was in the shower. He stepped out of the shower, and there was a cat, but the size of a man, okay, bipedal, and the cat was wearing a hat. Okay, this is just like the cartoon that we
see. Cat in the Hat.
Yeah, and this cat had, and he looked at him, and I mean, and it vanished. And I believe this guy because this guy he was serious about it. I mean, there's so many type of creatures that people encounter and see that is mind-boggling. Maybe some of them are meant to confuse us or to confound us. I don't know, but it's just,
if that's the case, it's working.
Yeah, I collected so many cases, and I can't really tell you where. The only thing that I come up with is that a lot of these creatures, like I mentioned earlier, come from other dimensions, and they at times they could cross into our dimension, which is easier for them to do for some reason than for us to go to their dimension and for us to come back. If we do cross over there, most of the time we don't come back. I do believe in extraterrestrials also that could be visiting. Maybe there's a kind of conflict between both groups, and we're stuck. We're caught in the middle. The forces of heaven against the forces of underground here on Earth, or what they call it.
Certainly seems that way from this book.
Who knows? You got any more cases you want to mention here? There's a lot of it.
Well, let's see.
Today, I have like something in like an eye. My eyes really bother me today.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
That's okay. That'll be today.
Okay, so from Katsuraki Mountain, Japan. This is the second encounter. According to the ancient Japanese manuscript Nihoni, the Emperor Oho Hatsuse Wakataka no Mikoto had gone hunting in the mountain with bow and arrows when an unexpectedly tall man in a strange cap and tight-fitting clothes descended from the sky. By his face and manner of behavior, the emperor thought that he had encountered God himself,
right,
and decided to ask him who he was. And the tall man answered, "I am the God of visible people. You give me your king's name, and I will give you mine." The emperor answered, "I am Wakataka no Mikoto." And the tall man gave his name, "Your obedient servant, God Hito Koto Musi," which literally meant God of one word. Goodness that sprays evil with one word and the good by one word. And he left his chariot, maybe a spacecraft, that was emitting light and joined the emperor in his hunting expedition.
Yeah, we mentioned that earlier as another being interpreted religious interpretation as a god. But some of these beings, they actually call themselves gods. I don't know if they wanted to do that intentionally to have some control over the humans, because they say we're gods, so be afraid of me. I could do anything I want.
Don McDouglas has a question for you. He says he mentioned on a podcast a while ago about military uniforms encountered in abductions, and he wonders if you can elaborate more on it.
There's been many cases in which some researchers, they call military abductions MILABs.
MILABs, yeah.
Yeah, MILABs, in which the abductee or the witness, they're abducted. Suddenly they found themselves, but a lot of they find themselves accompanied by what they describe as soldiers, or wearing dark camouflage clothing with berets, some kind of insignia. So some of the insignia could be different, like a pyramid or different type. But anyway, these are accompanied by the aliens or by the humanoids themselves, and they seem to be there assisting the aliens in many ways. They control the humans. They abduct. And Charles Hall, the one that spoke about the tall whites, mentions that the tall whites they had bases in Nevada, and the bases were shared with the U.S. military and the aliens, the tall whites.
Did you say Charles Halt?
Charles Hall.
Holt. Haut?
No,
The guy who is the deputy base commander at Rendlesham?
No, not him. I mean Hall. Hall.
Oh, Hall. Okay.
Yeah, that he wrote the books about the tall whites.
Gotcha.
And
that's a very interesting
also,
subject.
Yeah, there's also several cases in Puerto Rico in the El Yunque area, the mountain, the rainforest, in which witnesses claimed to have been taken underground installations there, and a lot of the installations are manned by what they describe as military men, along with humanoids. So there's some kind of cooperation there.
I think that it was either Ingo Swann. I think it was Ingo Swann. Was tasked with viewing a base on the far side of the moon.
The moon, yeah.
And he saw humans and grays working together, and the humans were naked. And I don't know what to make of that, but
maybe there were.
He got scared because he saw one of the alien beings, like one of the taller ones, not one of the tall whites, but one of the tall grays.
Tall grays, okay.
Look sort of at the virtual camera where he was looking in, and that being noticed him looking at them, and at that point he broke off the remote viewing.
He was able to notice Swan. That's interesting, and I read that account.
I think that's in his book Penetration, the one he wrote just before he died.
Yeah, I think this happened back in the 70s or 75 or something like that. But this guy was an interesting character, Ingo Swann. There's an anecdote I want to mention. One time before I heard about Ingo, or I didn't know who Ingo Swann was. I was maybe early 20s or 19 or 20. I was at home sleeping, and I had some kind of dream, and I woke up and I had the name Ingo Swann in my. I just spoke the name Ingo Swann.
Really?
And I don't. What is it? What is that Ingo Swann? Is that a name, Ingo Swann? And I always kept it in the back of my mind till later. I started hearing about this guy. I started reading about him. I mean, why would I have it in my mind? I don't know. I never heard of him before. Ingo Swann.
Maybe he put the idea in your mind.
Who knows? Because that was back in the 70s. Yeah, early 70s. He was still alive then.
He was working for the CIA then.
Remote viewing. That's very interesting.
I've seen several episodes of Richard Dolan's show on YouTube, where every week we fight the good fight, and he has his wife on there with him, and she went through all of the remote viewing protocols and deals with sort of the psi side of things, and he deals with the nuts and bolts side of things. So she knows all those people.
I wish I would have been remote view trained. I would have loved to do that.
Yeah.
I heard some of them,
that's her name. Yeah. Tracy.
I heard some of them could go to some of them have claimed to gone to the future, remote viewed into the future and the past. And of course, other planets or other places mostly were used. The reason the CIA wanted to use them, of course, during the Cold War, they wanted to see what the Russians were up to.
Sure. Yeah. They got a little more than they bargained for, huh?
Yeah.
So let's go back to the cases here. Can we talk about...
Well, there's one here from China. Interesting one. Did I mention 1751? Year 1751.
Okay, go for it.
In the Gansu province, Jiangxi, China, there was a drought at the time. You know, it was very dry and had no rain, and some of the farmers were irrigating, and they were preparing tools for irrigation when they saw what they describe a fiery glow that appeared in a forest nearby. The glow flew straight ahead to the river. There was a river nearby. It was about 2 or 3 meters in width, the globe. The farmers were shocked, but they were curious too. So they squatted down and watched, see what it was. After that, the globe approached and they saw a giant, what they describe a giant with red hair and blue skin, an entity, a humanoid. They say the giant looked around, and what was more, the giant was as bright as the sky. He was very bright as twinkling stars. Okay, and when he spoke and opened his mouth, the sound of what appeared to be a bamboo flute was heard. Again, that was interpreted by in China.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it was some type of other noise, but they interpreted it as a bamboo flute. He appeared to be holding a glowing light green jar close to his face. Now, this person, or whatever he was, this humanoid, then a few minutes later went back into his sphere, the fiery sphere, and it disappeared back into the sky. This is in the Encyclopedia of the Gansu Province, China. But very interesting that you have heard about the mummies they found in China that were red hair and very tall.
Vaguely, can you remind me?
They were. This is back in the 90s or early 2000. They had some archaeologists. This is near the Tibet border, mountainous area, where they found caves, and they found mummies there. And the mummies were not Chinese. They were more Caucasian with red hair, and they're very tall. And who knows? Maybe they were the pre-ancestors of the Chinese. They don't know how long they've been there. God knows. But I always find that very interesting. That's I'm sure if you Google it, you'll read the whole story. I don't have it in front of me now, but
I don't think the Chinese have any redheads. I think
that's what I mean.
The thing that might be the most interesting is that they might have been, Vikings that crossed the sea.
Or maybe who knows? Maybe
they could have been the sky gods, or anything.
Well, just like in Japan, the Ainu, which way they're whiter than the regular Japanese. They're more Caucasian. That's what I meant.
Mm-hmm.
And their myth or their history, they claim that they come from the sky, and they're completely different from the Japanese.
Don McDouglas says, "I've heard China also has pyramids."
Yes, and for some reason they keep that away from the public. They don't want to. It's like off limits to regular public.
That and just about everything else, right?
Yeah, true. Yeah, and for some reason they do that and I don't know why. Why would they do that? But they found huge pyramids. According to the information, one of them was white, completely white, or a couple of them were. And now they're like, who knows? They keep everything under wrap over there.
Can we jump ahead to the Western Iceland case in 1733?
Go ahead. Start it. Let me find it myself. Go ahead.
It says the natives of Talnakafjord in the western part of the island had a surprise a while ago when they cut up the belly of a huge shark they had just caught. In the stomach, they found a large body which was similar to the upper body of a man, but the natives believed it was a merman that the shark had swallowed. The size of this merman was like that of an 8 to 9-year-old boy. The shape of the head was similar to a man, but the occipital bone was quite sharp and pointy. The hair was black, thick, and long to the shoulders, but no hair was visible on the rest of the body, no beard or eyebrows. The ears were big and hung down, and the teeth long and conical in shape, like those of a catfish. The tongue was wide and short, and the eye color the same as a cod, while the forehead was high and curved at the top. The nostrils were man-like, with a deep stripe under the septum of the nose and a little dimple of the chin. His shoulders were very high and the neck short. The arms corresponded with the body size, and each had 5 very thin fingers. The chest and the backbone were man-like, but the ribs were gristly. The meat was coarse and black like that of a seal where visible. The shark had been cut open on the beach when it was brought in, and it is said that the merman laid there on the shore for about a week, but the local people did not want it to be there, so they dumped it back into the sea, and it was never seen again. This phenomenon was widely talked about in the area, and the learned men said the merman had not been caught in the sea since the age of the settlement of Iceland, which began in the year 874, when one of the settlers by the name of, and I'm going to massacre this, I apologize, Grimmer Ingsaldsson caught one when he was fishing in the Steingrimsfjord, also in the western part of the island.
There a lot of people might find it unbelievable, but there's been a lot of cases of modern day mermaids encounters, and I'm talking about mermaids in fresh water too. I've been seen in South America, Peru,
Yeah,
and in Russia, Belarus, and they're like amazingly, they're like the typical mermaid from the one you read in the myth and the children's story. The top half is human. A lot of the times is a male. Sometimes it's a female, blonde hair. I mean, the typical description. And the bottom part is like a fish. But a lot of times they see these merman type people in the water, and they're like normal humans, except they have gills. And they swim, they live underwater. Where underwater do they live? I don't know, but they've been seen all over the globe.
crazy, man, crazy.
Mermaid. And of course, a lot of these reports are never heard of because of the people don't want to. I mean, if you go out there and you see something like that, would you like to tell everybody what you saw?
Well,
I saw a mermaid.
it'd be okay with me, but a lot of people wouldn't
No.
want to.
No, I mean there's a little booklet written by a Peruvian. He's an archaeologist that he wrote a book. He researched the Amazon part of Peru and the upper highlands of Peru. With there, people have seen what they call the queen of the waters. They call her, and is a mermaid-like creature. But this queen of the water is bipedal. She has human-like legs, and she's blonde, which is for the native Peruvians is not that common, and tall, very tall also. And this is not in the ocean. I'm talking about freshwater lakes.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Live at the Love Shack says there are no mermaids in Belarus. There are no oceans in Belarus. But apparently, this was in a canal, right?
No, the Belarus case is in a reservoir there. I don't have it right in front of me, but it was a reservoir. And I got the report from a Belarusian UFO site that was sent to me. And there's even a drawing of the mermaid jumping in the water. I forgot the name of the reservoir. If I had it in front of me, I could tell the person.
How a mermaid got there, I'll never know.
Maybe, well, the reservoir used to be a lake or a river, and it's probably there before. Yeah.
Fascinating stuff. So let's see here.
You have listeners from Belarus. Oh, interesting.
What about the one from the Gansu province, Jingji, China, from 1751? Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I just mentioned that. This is about the giant with the red hair.
Oh,
That came
right.
down
Okay.
in the fairy, and the sphere. Let me find another one here. Okay,
And
this is
then what about the the Russian story from the Kazan province in 1752? Did we cover that yet?
yeah, that's the boy that was looking for berries, and he was
Hmm.
taken inside a cauldron made out of copper.
And that story is actually from a university.
Yeah, from the Chronicles. It was written there in the Chronicles. There's a lot of reports like that, stories like that, that they're hidden in places like that. They're really hard to find. You really got to dig deep. Of course, I didn't find it, but other researchers did. There's another case from Russia. They it even has an exact date, which is unusual. Is September 8th, 1380, in the Kulikovo, Central Russia. On this date, what they call sky forces were apparently interfere in a battle between Russian armies and Mongol and the Tatar troops. Okay, they interfere. According to the reports, they came from the sky and they helped the Russians. They attacked the Mongol troops and the Tatars, and they used what they call fiery arrows to destroy the Mongol troops. And this was the turning point. You
These
know,
were fiery arrows, right?
yeah, that were used by the sky forces or the sky warriors. They incinerated the Mongols and the Tatars and made them retreat. And
So definitely on the side of the Russians.
yeah, and that that's after that the Russian Empire grew more because they were somebody was helping them. Yeah,
Yeah, it's really interesting. These very bizarre tales, which include quasi-religious overtones and otherworldly details. Some of the earliest alien abduction reports, maybe. Very, very interesting.
a lot of the reports also in the we're talking about the Middle Ages, early during the witch hunt,
Hmm.
Inquisition. A lot of the women or people that were accused of being witches reported encounters with strange beings, men in black or entities in black, and they reported that they flew through the air. Now, when they told somebody about this, they were accused of being witches, and a lot of them said, well, "Yeah, I mean, I'm not a witch, but I flew through the air with this man that took me through the air." Which,
Right.
I mean, what else are you going to call them? And that's why the religious aspect took over a lot of those incidents, and they were labeled witch, and everything was under witch, either a warlock or a witch.
Right.
And if you, a lot of time, people refuse to talk about what happened to them because they would be burned at the stake. In Spain, Germany, England, Italy, all those countries.
Well, please continue with some of your favorite cases from this book. It's fascinating.
This is a back in the colonial period, South America, in the area which is now Argentina, Santiago del Estero. There was a popular belief around that time that there in the area dwelled near the Rio Salado River a very rich landholder named Amobindo. It is said that he had a fortune was incalculable. This is in year 1785. It is said that he kept buried treasure on several locations in his land, which included gold and precious gems. It was also rumored he was frequently visited by a strange shape-shifting entity, which at times resembled a man, and another times it resembled a large bull with shiny golden horns. They say that this strange being lived in a nearby forest, and they say that after Amovindo died, the bull reappeared and led all the farm animals away into the forest, never to be seen again.
Wow.
That's weird. And
talk about high strangeness.
Yeah, and it's funny. I know there's another case from Argentina, 1989, in which there was a group, and this group was a UFO contact group. They were out there, and I remember the place in Argentina looking for
trouble.
Yeah, they were actually wanted to contact or wanted to see, and they were out in the field meditating or sitting around, and they looked up. They saw a bull, big horn, running towards them. They got up and they didn't know what to do. They were frozen, and before the bull got up to them or struck them, it disappeared in plain sight. And there's also
there's modern equivalents to that at the Skinwalker Ranch. Lots of UFO reports. They'd see humanoids, ghosts, everything. Come running up to the person. The person's totally fucking scared shitless, and then they disappear before they make contact.
Yeah. Before
what is with that?
It's some kind of message, or they trying to put fear into you. I don't know, but there's also reports of Bigfoot type creatures. This is back in '78 in Ohio, accompanied by panthers. A couple cases like that. They seen the Bigfoot, then they saw next to the Bigfoot what appeared to be a black panther, and they were together. I mean, they were not fighting or anything like that. They appeared to be, friends.
Yeah, they were pals.
I remember they were hanging out.
Yeah, I remember reading an account just yesterday, I think, about abductees seeing Bigfoot aboard a saucer when they were, abducted, and it was an unmistakable, big hairy man.
Right, definitely connected with UFOs.
And it's funny because a lot of the Bigfoot investigators will say, "Keep your UFOs out of my Bigfoot." And the UFO investigators will say, "Keep your Bigfoot out of my UFOs," but they're interlocked. I mean, it happens all the time.
Not so much anymore. Everybody's beginning to realize that this phenomenon is all connected.
I interviewed Joshua Cutchin and Timothy Renner the other day for their book, Where the Footprints End.
Yes.
And Joshua Cutchin had a lot to say about that.
Excellent book. I read it. There's cases that people know, that researchers know, but the general public that do not hear about them much. It's been in Pennsylvania. Stan Gordon. He found so many cases, a lot of them, in which Bigfoot was seen either close to a UFO or by a UFO, even entering a UFO.
Timothy Renner told me, in Pennsylvania, find me a UFO report, and I'll find you a Bigfoot report within 24 hours, either way, within 10 miles.
Yeah.
What is going on in Pennsylvania? Why is it so weird? I
wish I knew, but like I spoke to Lon Stickler. He has documented a lot of cases from there also, but it's like, it's an incredible amount of incidents from there. And there's so many researchers, good researchers from Pennsylvania also. And I guess it needs to be, because there's so much stuff going on there that, you don't hear, I'm sure it occurs, but you don't hear too much stuff happening in, let's say, North Dakota or even Montana. I think a lot of Bigfoot incidents there too. But
unless you're Dave Paulides, in which case,
or a lot of those areas, there's a lot of the Native American, like Six Killer mentioned, they do have encounters there, but they mostly are kept but to themselves, to the tribe. They go to the elders and they speak about it. They call them, sky people. Where they've been used to that for years.
Hmm.
They're more open to us being visited by sky people or sky gods. Or
Yeah, I mean, one of the investigators that I've had on more than others has been Christopher O'Brien, who I'm sure you're familiar with.
yes,
And his book, Stalking the Herd,
right.
he went on to reservations with the Lakota and the Sioux and, all this kind of people. And he's like the only white man investigator that has been allowed on those reservations to investigate these cattle mutilations and skinwalkers and things like that, because he first, would approach the elders and the native people and just hang out with them and ask them questions and sort of be disarming.
Yeah, you gotta gain their
Spend
confidence.
some time with them.
I was lucky that I contacted Andy Siskiller a couple times, and she talked. She sent me several cases. I also been contacted by Native Americans describing their cases. A lot of them are described with what you call skinwalkers, which supposedly are shamans that they're able to turn themselves into different type of animals.
Mm-hmm.
Not only wolves or dogs, they could turn into eagles and stuff, other type of. And then there's also I spoke to one guy on the phone. I think he was in Wyoming, and he was a Native American. He was in his ranch, and they looked at him next to a tree by his house. That was what he described was a little green man, LGM, your typical alien back. It was a green man. He had like pointed ear, similar to the Kentucky goblin, and he was hiding behind the tree. They went out to get it, and it disappeared, or it said that it ran, and then so fast that they couldn't see where he went. But there's many cases from reservations that really out there, really weird.
Oh yeah. And it's not even just Skinwalker Ranch. I mean, there are these sort of window or portal areas all over the world.
Interesting. In Utah, there's been a lot of cases there, and there's it's a mixture of cases there. A lot of Bigfoot and a lot of humanoid cases, UFO cases. And I wish there was a book, which there was back in the 70s. There was a UFO, the Utah UFO display, written. What's his name? I can't remember his name right now, but he chronicled a bunch of cases from Utah, a lot of interesting cases, and some of them were like we're talking about the 70s. A lot of them had the paranormal overtone, which you didn't read too much back in the 70s or 60s, connected to UFOs, which now is almost very common. He mentioned some people in Provo or Salt Lake City. They were messing around with a Ouija board, and they asked to be contacted. And a UFO appeared.
Was this the one by Frank Salisbury?
Salisbury, yeah, Frank Salisbury. Yeah, excellent book. Utah UFO display. A lot of interesting cases there.
So, what are some of your more favorite cases from this book?
From my book, or
from this the 1 AD to 1899.
I like the later cases. There were so many of them. I didn't want to pick up so many because there were, but there's many of them. The ones that I printed out some. Let me see if I did. Let's see if there's one that we haven't spoken about.
Well, we've got another 50 minutes to burn, so
better find some more, huh?
Yeah.
Let me bring up the you have the book in front of me or no? The PDF.
I do.
Okay. Open it up. See what we can find here. Because there's a lot of, like I said, a lot of interesting cases. A lot of them deal with the control or direction of human affairs.
It's very interesting. That does seem to be the case.
Yeah.
What about the one on page 31 near Tolpatelac, Mexico, December 9th, 1531, about Juan Diego?
Oh, that's the Virgin of Guadalupe encounter,
Yeah.
which of course it was interpreted as the Virgin of Guadalupe. That's a very interesting case. And the encounter, strangely enough, like it mentions there, occurred in the same location. Like it happened many times in Europe with the ancient sites that belong to the Celts or the Druids or the Roman, and that's where the Virgin will appear in the same locations and old temples that belong to the in Aztecs. In the Guadalupe case, it was an Aztec temple that was there, and the Virgin appeared there, and she told Juan Diego to build a shrine here and destroy the old temple, or build a shrine on top of the old temple, which is very interesting. It's like Christianity taking over the old gods.
Yeah, I spoke with Walter Bosley not too long ago, and he talks about telluric currents. Are you familiar with that?
With what now?
Telluric currents.
I heard of telluric.
They run through the earth. They're energies that run through the earth. They're natural, like where lightning strikes and things like
ley
that.
lines.
Well, ley lines are actually, according to Walter, they're made by humans, and they're connecting to these telluric currents. So one end will be on one telluric current, and the other end will be on another telluric current. But the telluric currents are pre-existing, and they run through the earth, the magnetic field of the earth, and they've been scientifically known for a long time. The telegraph companies knew about telluric currents, and when they do low frequency stuff like through the earth or through the ocean, they tend to work through these telluric currents.
Well, the Chinese had a same or similar way of doing things. The I Ching, and they were like lines, either magnetic or energy lines through the earth, and they will construct their houses either on those lines, so that for them it will be like power and health. I mean, it was very interesting because that was a very important thing to do, to follow those lines.
It almost sounds like taking feng shui to the next level.
Yeah, feng shui. Did I say I Ching?
I Ching. Yeah.
I Ching, yeah. There's this case from Japan about the lady that appeared on shore, and she was in a copper, another like a bell-shaped object. And let me bring up the.
This one is a very fascinating case.
Let me print it here so I could read it out. It occurred in the year, and they even have an exact date, 1803, February 22nd, at a place called Arajadori in the Hitachi province.
What was the year again?
1803.
1893?
No, 1803.
Okay. Yeah, this one's just fascinating.
There were some local fishermen there. They were on the shore, and they saw what they describe as a ship that frightened them on the water. And the ship was just floating there, and they towed it back into the shore. They said it was about 3.30 meters high and 5.45 meters in width, and it looked to them like an incense burner, a giant one, of course. The upper part appeared to be made out of a red coated rosewood, while the lower part was covered with brazen plates obviously to protect it against the sharp, the rocks, the edge rocks on the shore. And they had several windows made out of glass or crystal, covered with bars and clogged with some kind of tree resin. Weird. And the windows were completely transparent, and the fishermen they looked inside. The inner side of the what they call the Utsuron Bune was decorated with text written in an unknown language. So they saw something inside that was an unknown language. It wasn't Japanese. And the fishermen found items inside, such as bed sheets, a bottle filled with water, some cake, and kneaded meat. And then the fishermen they saw a beautiful young woman, possibly 18 to 20 years old. Her body was size was said to be almost 5 feet, kind of short. She had red hair. Again, we're talking about red hair.
It
Just like
keeps
the
coming
Chinese,
up, doesn't it?
yeah, the Chinese account, and eyebrows. The hair was elongated by artificial white extensions. So she was wearing extensions back then.
Crazy.
The extensions could have been made out of white fur or thin white powder textile streaks. I'm not sure. And she wore precious, long, smooth clothing of unknown fabric. The fabric was unknown. And she spoke, but no one understood what she was saying.
Hmm.
Spoken in an unknown language. She didn't. She did not seem to understand the fishermen either. No one could ask her about her origin, so they didn't know where she come from. She did not seem to understand. Okay, she appeared to be friendly, and courteous. She acted oddly, for she always clutched a. She was carrying what they describe a box made out of a pale material and around 23 inches in size. The woman did not allow anyone to touch the box, no matter how kindly or pressingly the witnesses asked. She was carrying up. I guess this box was for her own protection or something. I could only assume. An old man from the village said that the woman could be a princess or a foreign realm who married at her homeland, but when she had an affair with a townsman after marriage, she escaped. This only he assumed that. And during the incident, a small board with a pin head was found. The content of the box could therefore be the same, which will certainly explain why she protected her so much. Well, and eventually, she went back inside this object or this craft, whatever it was, and just floated away. And what I understand, there were a couple reports similar to that from Japan around the same time. A woman with red hair, spoke an unknown language.
Shows up in a huge pearl.
Yeah,
That's
fascinating.
it's crazy stuff. I mean, and you hear this kind of thing over and over and over. Um, let's see. Do any of the cases in this book cover the the woodcut from Germany, where there's all the flying things in the sky? I want to say Hamburg, but that's not right.
Well, from Germany, there's a lot of cases during the Middle Ages, during the plague, Black Death, what they call it, in which entities were seen in the field.
Yes.
Black entities and the Burning Man of Railsback in Germany.
Yeah, please tell us about that case. That one's fascinating.
The peasants or the farmers in a place called Railsback in Germany in the year 11,115 or something like that. They saw repeatedly in the fields near their farm a figure of a man that looked like he was on fire. This man walked around or ran around several times, and soon after that, there was the plague came to the area. They assumed this guy was an omen, or forecasting what was going to happen.
And,
But
and they could even see his ribs, right?
oh yeah, he was like skeletal, but on fire.
So yeah, he was
Yeah.
a what they call a plague
Bearer or
portent.
portent.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, there's a case from. Do you see me?
Mhm.
Yeah, you see me. Okay. There's a case from. This is back in 1804 in the Indian Territory, which is now Nebraska. There was reported that in one of some of the Indian nations, they said that in one of the creeks there, in one of the mouth of the river, lived what they call devils. They were human in form and remarkable large heads. Okay, large heads and about 18, only 18 inches high. That they were very watchful and were armed with sharp arrows, which could kill at a great distance. Interesting. There's a lot of the Indian legends and stories deal with a little people like that. Also with giants, and this particular group here were kind of aggressive. They were able to kill like like say Indians using some type of arrow from a great distance. And again, they were small with large heads.
Does
Perhaps
that sound
similar,
familiar at all?
yeah, maybe similar to the you know who
Yeah.
the Greys.
Those who we shall not speak their name.
And see if you find any other case you want to mention.
Well, what are some of your favorites?
Well, there's a lot of the cases that I enjoy in reading are the ones that deal with the fairy type entities, little
Mhm.
people, little man.
Did we cover the
elves.
one from Munster, Germany, from 1532?
Is that the one with the goblin type?
It says the Anabaptists at Munster were convinced that they saw
Okay, yeah,
luminous apparitions.
and they said this happened in Munster, Germany, and perhaps in Poland.
Mm.
This is in the year 1532, and there were a lot of the Anabaptists there convinced that they saw luminous apparitions of what they call angels and dragons struggling in the sky. I guess that means they were battling each other,
Hmm.
and they'd received from them commands to kill those whom the love best. They love best. I guess I gotta fix that. Even brothers and sister. I mean, why would they tell them to kill their? I mean, their their family. I don't know. And they were also instructed to abstain from food for an entire month, and that they had the power to paralyze large armies by a look or by their breath. These entities, these angels or dragons.
Hmm.
Very weird.
It is. And in Wittenberg, Prussia, 1553, locals saw giant men in the sky over Wittenberg in formerly East Prussia. And that's from the Anomalist. And
Peter.
then,
Oh, okay. Yeah, Peter Park.
uh,
And then, okay, now we go to another German case, 1555, May 21, from Wetzel, Germany. And there was an unusually fiery large fire that crashed into the middle of the Rhine River. It submerges and rises immediately again and hovers about 3 to 4 meters above the water. This is in 1555. And which begins to boil under it. The water begins to boil right under it. At the same time, on the banks of the river, witnesses see a specter, what that is called. They describe a specter, who appears to change form from into a dog and then suddenly disappear. This I got from a German researcher, Frank J. Chappell. He chronicle a lot of cases from Germany. It sounds like a UFO landed in the river, went up, and then hovered, and then maybe an occupant was seen on the shore. Maybe they could only describe it as a specter that changed to a dog, which is shapeshifter. Who knows? Pretty weird. Like sounds like a skinwalker. And here's the from okay. This is the Nuremberg case, 1561. That the sky battle, and at the same time, according to the reports, there were strange. Some of those objects that were fighting landed, and there were reports of entities seen coming out of the objects. In Russia, August 29, 1566, south of Moscow, an area called Kolomenskoye. Local peasants in this village located south of Moscow encountered, this is weird, a tall, hairy humanoid entity, which they call a wood goblin. It sounds like a troll or a Bigfoot. In this legendary place near the banks of the river Moskva. And the frightened locals quickly fled in terror. Other reports indicated that these giant hairy entities have been seen in this area on several occasions, and for centuries, and reputedly are able to slip into. Listen to this: are able to slip into our realm from other dimensions. This is in 1566. Rumors indicated that there was a gateway or portal into another dimension in the area where large dolmens were located. Of course, dolmens are the ancient structures or rocks or that they were built in certain sacred places, locations. They were located at the bottom of the Golosovi Gully. Decades later, there were reports of mysterious disappearances of residents in the nearby villages of Dyakovo and Tadobedniki between 1825 and 1917. This report is from famous Russian researcher Vadim Chernobrov, who unfortunately passed away recently from cancer. He wrote this in the Encyclopedia of the Mysterious Places in Russia. Very interesting case.
Indeed. I wanted to go over the. This is on page 24. If you could lead us.
What's the name of the location? You have it?
It's Domremy, Duchy of Bar, France, 1424. With Joan of Arc.
Joan of Arc. She's reputedly, I don't know if you saw the movie, but she was the daughter of Jacques d'Arc and Isabelle Romy. They lived in a 50-acre plot of land, and according to reports of history, that she many times she saw visions of figures of she interpreted them as religious figures in the fields, St. Michael, St. Catherine, and St. Margaret, and they instructed her to drive out the English and bring the Dauphin to Reims for his coronation. Of course, a French king. She said she cried when they left, and they were so beautiful. Now, this is another instance in which forces interfere with human history. After she eventually did force the English out of France, and the French king came into power. Unfortunately, they turned against her also, accused her of witchcraft, and they burned her at the stake.
Which actually means that they knew that she was in with the Templars.
The Templars, another interesting group. Yeah.
Apparently the sword of Joan of Arc was what the Inquisition was after. And the only time that she lost a battle was when she didn't have that sword with her. And that's when they tortured her and asked her where the sword was. It was a very special sword. And it might have been either Excalibur, the sword of King Arthur, or made from Excalibur. And every battle that she fought with that sword, she won. And then when I guess the Vatican and the French Pope found her and caught her, she didn't have her sword with her, so she ultimately got burned at the stake.
Yeah. Well, they say that the Templars, when they were in Jerusalem, they found some artifacts there, and those artifacts they took back into to first to France, and these were like holy relics supposedly, and that's one of the reasons they were hunted down and destroyed, mostly because they didn't want to reveal what those relics were, and a lot of them say there was the part of the cross of Christ and different stuff like that. Maybe that sword that she had was brought also from by the Templars.
It's said that
That's another story.
Saint Catherine didn't actually exist. She was one of the substitutes when the Catholic Church, went to the pagans that wouldn't give up their holidays. They would basically say, well, okay, you can have Hecate, but just call her Saint Catherine, and you can still have it on the same day, but just call her that. And of course, after several generations, people forgot about Hecate.
Oh. After a while, like Charlemagne destroyed most of the pagans in Europe. I mean, they used
Convert
the cross.
or die, right?
Right, like the same like the Indians in the Americas or in the Caribbean when the Spanish came over. They either converted or they were burned at the stake. A lot of them prefer to be burned. They asked one of the famous caciques in Cuba, if you convert, you go to heaven with us. He goes, no, if I have to go to heaven with you, I'd rather burn at the stake. So they burnt them.
Yeah, it's a lot like what happened in the Holocaust in the 30s and the 40s.
Yes.
A lot of Jewish families, converted to Christianity, but they secretly practiced, Judaism at home, and then reemerged after the war.
They converted so they wouldn't be
killed. Yeah.
Killed by the Nazis.
Yeah, exactly.
And if they converted, they were spared.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and they wouldn't necessarily know, the Nazis wouldn't necessarily know that they were ever Jewish, because along with converting to Christianity, air quotes, they would also change their name. So
I understand.
If it was Greenbaum, they would change it to Green Tree or
Green
whatever.
Tree.
Yeah.
Well, moving on to another case which has to deal with human history, the famous Battle of Culloden. Culloden, I don't know if I'm saying it right, near Aberdeen, present-day Scotland, the English against the Scots. They said that right before the battle, this is where after the battle, the 11 witnesses swore before the city council of Aberdeen that they have observed 3 globes of light. This is in 1748, August 5th. Men and armies in the sky at around 2 p.m. in a valley located 5 miles from the west of the city. They first assumed the 3 globes of light were meteorological in nature, but their intensity increased, and then 12 tall men appeared, dressed in bright clothing. These tall men, they walked across the valley, followed by 2 armies that appeared to reenact the Battle of Culloden, which occurred near Inverness back in 1746. It's kind of weird because there's been many cases in which mostly back in the Middle Ages, in which they have seen armies in the sky fighting or reenacting battles.
Yeah, it reminds me of in India with the Vimanas, right?
Yeah, but these were basically the same battle that was fought 2 years before. It was seen in the sky again. Pretty weird. I mean, something wanted it to be reenacted.
That's also happened on the ground at Gettysburg. People have seen not only ghosts but entire armies of ghosts fighting each other.
Oh, yeah, in Chimney Rock, North Carolina, also they've been
Hmm.
seeing armies when dressed in white in the sky. Yeah, and there's also Napoleon was influenced by what we call the little red man that appeared to him several times. And according to report, this little red man counseled Napoleon and told him, what to do, what battles he should, take on. And he was seen in many. He was seen also by the King of Rome, and he was seen right before the death of the French King Louis XIII. And we see a lot of times figures like this influencing history. They even say that George Washington at the banks of the Potomac, he was a shining angel appeared to him and told him what was going to happen in the future. Or
I've never heard that. That's
yeah,
fascinating.
let me see if I it is written several texts. George Washington.
There's a lot about George Washington that most people don't know. A lot of people know that he was a Freemason.
Right.
He was a reluctant first president of the United States. He really didn't want to be president, but I guess they talked him into it.
Well, this
But he had a lot of, let's say, hobbies that most people aren't aware of.
oh yeah.
Oh yeah,
Well,
all the founding fathers did.
yeah, that's especially Franklin. I heard.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
he
Well,
loved to go to France.
Yeah. This report there from the Washingtons, he was at Valley Forge, not at the Potomac, and he said that he was visited by a tall, robed, long-haired figure with a reddish face. At first, he thought he was a native tribesman, an Indian, and he he met with this person, and after the meeting, he was convinced he wasn't an Indian at all, but he was convinced he had met an angel, and the angel had just advised him to continue the struggle, that there will be a great nation will be built, which is interesting.
It is fascinating.
This is in 1777, actually.
Hologram Nunchuck says, didn't the little red man tell Napoleon to stay away from Russia, but Napoleon didn't listen?
Yeah, there's been reports that he cautioned Napoleon not to go to Russia because he was going to drain his army and they were going to be destroyed. Actually, that's what happened.
Mm-hmm.
Also, the French army was destroyed in Russia, just like the Nazis were destroyed when they invaded Russia, like in World War II. So, yeah, the French suffered the same fate before the Nazis.
I often wonder, what would have happened if Hitler had kept his non-aggression pact with Stalin.
That would have been a nightmare, I would imagine. Even though
we'd all be speaking German, and I wouldn't be here.
You know what? I don't think I don't know why. I guess they had that aggression pact just to take over Poland, but I don't think it would have lasted. Their ideologies were so different. Communists against National Socialism.
Yeah, National Socialist Workers' Party.
I don't think it was going to last. Here's an interesting case from the Isle of Man, 1830, October. This is about little fairy type beings. A man that later became a member of the parliament, local parliament, was one night on his way to harvest with a friend, when they saw a supernatural light a light on the field, which within that light they saw a great crowd of little beings, okay, dressed in red. They were moving back and forth amid the circle of light, and they form into order like troops drilling or marching. I mean, a light in the field, little man. Yeah, like you said, sounds familiar. Sounds like a UFO on the ground with little entities around it. Of course, interpreted as little people or fairies, elves. In Germany, there were many cases also of wolf wolf type bipedal wolves or wolfmen or werewolves. 1831 and placed near Sarnau, Germany. They said it was a terrible wolf on the loose in the woods, causing great harm to humans and cattle. He was mutilating cattle. He even attacked and killed a child. All the peasants in the region banded together and pursued him, finally surrounding him in some brush. They killed it. They're about to kill him, sorry, when suddenly a large man-like figure holding a club appeared before them. Thinking that the terrifying figure was a werewolf, the peasants scattered. So they were assuming that bipedal wolf turned into this man, was a werewolf, and I guess they didn't kill it. There's not too much information about that one, but weird. A lot of people incidents are fairy elves. They come from Ireland, Isle of Man.
What year was that last case from?
German case?
The one with the werewolf, yeah.
I'll tell you right now. 1831.
1531.
Yeah, near Sarnau, Germany. Zaarnow, Sarnau.
So let's work our way back from like the more recent ones, especially your favorites from toward the end of the timeline, toward the end of the book.
Well, especially towards the end, we go into the 1890s. Of course, we had the airship incidents.
Right.
A lot of them were reputed to be hoaxes, but a lot of them I think they were genuine. And there were so many of them that it's really hard to. It started, of course, back in 1896 in California. Migrated over to the plain, Chicago, that area there, Illinois, Ohio.
And they were seen in Kansas and Texas.
Texas a lot, and Kansas.
But am I right in recalling that all of the occupants that were seen were human? Right?
Most of them were, and they looked pretty common, human-like. But some of them were reported to be. There were some rare cases in which the occupants were reported to be small or like dwarves. If I find
there was one case that stood out in particular where the airship looked like I think a regular boat, and they had a rope with an anchor on it, and a guy kind of climbed down the rope to get the anchor back, and the townspeople were trying to get at the man, so he scurried back up the rope, and then they just cut the rope, and the local blacksmith made something out of the anchor.
I read about that case, yeah, and there's also a case identical to that supposedly occurred in the Middle Ages in England. Again, they saw like what they call a sky ship, and an anchor was thrown, and somebody descended on the anchor because it was stuck in the steeple of a church. And yeah, and then I don't know what happened to him. I don't know if he was captured or if he was stoned. They say they threw rocks at him. I don't know. But here's the case. May 3, 1897 from Cassville, Indiana. It was a man going home late at night. He was walking by a gravel pit, and he saw on that gravel pit a 40-foot long cigar shaped airship. And he was apparently able to see inside the craft and reported seeing handsome furnishings and several midgets that spoke in an unknown language. So this is interesting because this is not exactly what was really reported all the time.
Albert, what has happened to these dwarves, elves, pixies, gnomes, brownies, fairies? In your mind, have they just gone underground?
It seems like they're still seen, not as, of course, like before, like the 1970s. If you read the Passport of Magonia database of cases, you don't hear about any grays or anything like that. None.
No, you hear about the short men with the red hats and the
right
and the green
like the one in Italy
shoes.
they stole the flowers from the lady and walking by her. They were short. Or the one the one seen in Death Valley, 1949, where they saw two short men, but they were human-like. They were not, grays. The grays, I don't know. Maybe the grays have taken over this quadrant here in space. They've taken control over Earth. But the grays,
according to Dr. David Jacobs' book, which I happen to have a copy of right here. I'm not sure if you can see that. Walking Among Us.
Walking Among Us, yeah.
Yeah, have you read that?
I have not. I have so many books I got to read a stack, but I think he mentions that a lot of the other aliens reported are grays that they're able to shapeshift into other types of aliens.
This one is called Walking Among Us, the alien plan to control humanity.
By using hybrids, isn't that right?
Yeah. And it's about breeding out all of the alien physically, but keeping their psychic power or the neurological control that they're able to have over humans. And
that's why so many of those hybrids, so-called hybrids, are almost human-like, but not quite. There's something.
Yeah, but now he calls them hybrids in this book because they look absolutely human, 100%. They could pass on the street and you wouldn't even notice them. But they have the neurological control over human beings, just like the grays do. Like when people stare, into their eyes, and they're communicating sort of through the optic nerve during abductions. According to this book.
What's the name of the book again?
It's called Walking Among Us.
Walking Among Us. Yeah. A lot of these quasi-humans or parahumans, some people call them, have blended in. They've been seen, in stores, walking among us, like he says. And they almost completely pass as normal humans. Most of the time they do.
Yeah,
I mean, you have to be really close up. There's some that maybe they haven't finished their process of hybridization. They walk around wearing sunglasses, and behind their sunglasses, you can see their eyes are bigger and oval shaped.
Yeah, I remember Whitley Strieber said that when he was on his communion book tour, he was at a Barnes and Noble or a Borders or something, and there were these two short people that were all wrapped up in winter gear and hoods and everything and sunglasses, even though it was blisteringly hot out.
Happening in New York, I believe.
Yeah, it might have been. And he happened to be there because he was signing books, and according to him, they were going through the book. And they were, talking about, well, he got this wrong, and this is wrong, and that didn't happen, So apparently that was sort of in the 80s. And by
87,
yeah. And by now they've had several generations to, make them look more human, but contain those, neurological control powers, those telepathy and psychic control powers?
I had a couple of experiences that I had back in the I'm thinking late 70s or early 80s. I think right after I got out of the Navy, so it must have been the 80s. In Miami, I went to like a grocery store one time, one of the large stores here, and
Was it like a Ralph's?
no, it was Publix.
Hmm.
They call Publix, and that's one of the main ones down here, a grocery store chain. And I went in there, and then I was just walking around. I don't know what I was looking for, but there was all of a sudden this like a family walked in, and they all looked the same. They were tall, blonde, and to me they had like longish hair, but it was kind of sparse. Not as sparse as mine, but it was like scraggly, and they were thin, very thin, and they were very white and blonde. And I was just looking at them, and the weird thing is, no one else seemed to notice them. No one else seemed to think that this was weird. And they were walking around, I think I tried to follow them around, but I said no, but it looked kind of weird. And soon after that, I was either walking, do my exercise around near my house, and a car pulled next to me, and it was like a black Mercedes, brand new. Window rolled down. It was a family, and they were like, you could tell that for me they were like cliche. They look Swedish, Nordic, blonde father, mother, children. But these look like normal, human beings. They were not like Dan or Skinner. And they asked me where was I going, and they asked me for directions to Key West. But I go, I mean, I'm in Miami. Key West is pretty far now. It's 400 miles, so 200 miles. So. And what were they? And I was in a side street and in a residential area, and away from any like highway or anything like that. And they were kind of like staring at me, and I was staring back. And then they just drove away. And then I lost sight of the car, and I thought it was interesting. Like a lot of the people report encounters like that with strangers in black cars or Cadillacs or whatever, Men in Black. I don't think
Black-eyed children, or Men in Black. I wanted to ask you here in sort of the last 10 minutes of the show, what would you say is your favorite movie or movies that deals with humanoid encounters?
I like Close Encounters of the Third Kind. At the end there, you see the little grays. I like the one with the guy from The Big Lebowski. What's his name?
Oh, John. You're asking the guy who's got a really bad memory. John Goodman.
No, the other one, the one that was Lebowski, but he had
the guy that was Starman, Jeff Bridges.
Starman. I enjoy that movie, and
That's a good movie. That was John Carpenter movie.
Midnight Run. Midnight Run is about possibly interdimensional entities that were like luminous, glowing. There are very few that I like. I'm not too much into science fiction, believe it or not. I did when I was younger. Yeah, I will read a lot of science fiction. But then I go, well, truth is stranger than fiction anyway.
So we do have a question for you. Don McDouglas says, I have a question for Albert. Does he know Dr. Stephen Greer? And if so, what is his opinion about him?
I know who Greer is. Supposedly he's able to do his like what they call CE5, Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, contact aliens, human initiated contact with aliens or extraterrestrials.
Yeah, he vectors them in.
Yeah, I had never been in contact with him. I read something, a little bit about him, but he reminds me of some of the contactees in South America, like Sixto Paz Wells. He founded a group Rama, which he does the same thing. He goes out and vectors them in or contacts them, and they form a what they call a sendra, like a dome, luminous dome, and then they go in. Uh, I'm not sure if Greer has ever contacted an alien face to face, but I'm in defense with that because I don't know too much about his research.
Yeah, he says that he's briefed, the last 5 presidents or something like that, but whenever he's asked, to produce evidence that he has done so, he can't and he doesn't.
He's
I
brief
think that some of his attitudes are good, but I think he might be another charlatan in the UFO community, and there are plenty of those.
Yeah, that's the thing. A lot of them are intentionally inserted into our community just to
mislead
make us look like a bunch of cooks or lunatic fringe, like I was called before.
Absolutely.
Proud to be part of the fringe.
Yeah.
And
not this fringe.
I remember one story. I used to go to this little bookstore out of the way that they used to have the old UFO books, which are possible to get now. Mm-hmm. And I will go there and I will find books, and one day I went in there and I remember I found the spaceships have landed by Adamski, and a couple of the books. I went to buy them to check them out at the counter, and there was this girl there, and she was one of those, like, what do you call it? They call the ones that goth type with the black hair, and she goes, "Oh, you're into UFOs?" And I go, "Yeah." I could see them whenever I want them. Whenever I want to see a UFO, I just call them down and they come down. And I was on my way to work, so I wish I would have stayed there and asked, "Okay, let's go outside and do it, see what we see."
Yeah.
But she was like,
"Prove it."
I mean, prove it, yeah. That's a lot of stuff in our hobby.
Well, it's a crazy world out there for sure. Let's go ahead and do our giveaway. And what we're going to do, I'm going to have Albert pick a number between 1 and 20. And I want everyone in the chat to put in a number between 1 and 20. And the person that gets closest without going over, Price is Right rules, wins a copy of Humanoid Encounters, The Others Among Us, 1 AD to 1899. So go ahead and pop a number between 1 and 20 in there. And Albert, you've got your number.
Yeah.
And what is your number, Albert?
15.
All right. So the closest without going over is Hologram Nunchuck. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Good job. So I will get Hologram Nunchuck's information to you, and you can get that out. And I wanted to ask, where can people find your books and find more out about you and your work online?
Well, they're my books, like I mentioned earlier, they're in the process of being republished again. Now it's really hard to find them. And they're going to be back on Amazon hopefully soon, within a month or two. And they're all 16 books are going to be back up, and I'm working on a 17th book that will be my last one.
That's a lot of books.
Yeah, and I'm working to set up a website. I haven't been able to do that. I mean, I have a Facebook page called humanoids, humanoids, UFOs, and other strange phenomena. You could join me in there. We discuss a lot of cases there also.
Do you have a website or anything?
No, I don't have a website at this point. No.
But you will.
Yeah, and as soon as I do, I'll let you know. It's going to be the winner that it's going to be a ebook, since I don't have any hard copies at hand right at this point.
Yeah.
When I do, I will, but I will send them the file, a PDF file ebook, when you give me his information.
Great. Well, thank you very much, and thanks for being on Into the Fringe again, Albert Rosales.
Thank you very much.
We look forward to talking to you next month.
All right, Gil. Hopefully, won't have the audio problems at the beginning again. But it's been a pleasure, and I really enjoyed it. Okay.
Me too. And it's great to have you here. And it was a wonderful conversation. I really enjoyed it. And I just want to say to everybody out there, it's Cardinal Sin out.